Daddy's Head from last year is a well-shot, tight 90-minute package about a love triangle of sorts. Laura is married to a wealthy man named James. Isaac is the son of James. Laura and Isaac do not like each other, and the first scene of the film is James's death. And what follows is a story about Laura having to deal with this new emptiness that the universe has thrust upon her, as represented by this large empty home that she once shared with her husband. Isaac having to deal with this loss after already losing his mother sometime in the past at such a young age, and both of them experiencing the arrival of a creature who lives out in the woods outside their home. A creature who visits them every single night, who lives in a strange house made of sticks, who wears the garish, smiling face of James upon its head, who whispers to Isaac that he is indeed his father, who has decided to take on a new form, that Isaac should come live with him in the woods, that they can be a family again, and be happy, and live in their house made of sticks. Although in reality we know that the time for that has passed and can never come again for these people. A door that can never be reopened has permanently shut. As a work, I think one could make the argument that the film is negatively derivative of The Babadook. Both in plot and thematically, they are very intensely similar experiences. Except The Babadook is a little scarier and a little bit more well made. And I kind of hate that because it is a shame to have a film that is this good be brought down by its striking similarities to another project. The monsters in each film even enter their lives through a vessel that is connected to one of the parents. Mr. Babadook first comes to them through a children's storybook and her connection to being a mother. And in this, the monster appears in a strange, bizarre, non-Euclidean house that is a mockery of the father's previous career as an architect. But just because it is so similar to that work does not make this one bad. In fact, one could almost view the film as an optimistic take on this very particular kind of grief. The Babadook is an intensely negative experience. She hates her son from the beginning and doesn't really change much by the end of it. Whereas this pair does not get along, but instead of being overcome by their grief in isolation, they defeat their grief together as a pair. By the end of the film, they form a bond of understanding for each other through their experience of fighting the dragon, so to speak. Taming the beast that is a physical representation of their despair at having lost the person in their life who gave their experience meaning, who just happened to be the same guy for both of them. There is a beauty and optimism here that I really appreciate, that in certain ways leans harder into one of the core intrinsic values of horror more than even The Babadook does, even if The Babadook is a better film. This is a little weaker in the back half, unfortunately, however, but it never gets to the point of being something that I would call bad, even though it does more or less peter out instead of build to a big climactic moment, which I think can be fine, obviously, if the story demands that kind of resolution, but maybe not in a monster movie. I would even go so far as to say that I do think that it is one of the better new horror films of last year despite these pacing issues. But the story is strongest when it is focusing on this relationship between mother and son who are not actually related by blood. That is the heart of this film. But the further we get into the monster stuff and the more we focus on her addiction problems with alcohol and her relationship to a new man, the less we have time for her connection to this boy. And as a result, it loses a bit of what I love so much in the front half. The strongest scene of the film to me is when Isaac can't sleep and comes to sleep in the bed with Laura after their first encounter with the monstrous form of the father. And these two people who admittedly do not like each other start on opposite sides of the bed, and by morning are cuddled together, only to then bring their guard up and separate when conscious. It's a great little scene, one of actual genuine human emotion that really works within the context of everything we have going on here. And I really wish as a filmmaker Benjamin Barfoot would have leaned into this more, because as his script continues, it becomes a bit rambling with unnecessary character detail. For instance, you could cut the character of Robert from the story and literally nothing would change, but you would have more time to develop this mother and son dynamic that the film is supposedly about. It would be like if in The Babadook, the mother had a new boyfriend who was in it for most scenes, that did nothing but took up a great deal of screen time from building the themes of the story. He talks a lot about his daughters, the connection that they share with Isaac, but this never actually comes into play once. It's just background texture. Robert is at one point attacked by the creature and as a result is hospitalized, and then we never hear anything about him again. We have no idea if he dies from these attacks, he just stops existing entirely. Even the film itself views him as a mostly trivial detail in this story, and he really should have been cut to hone in on the relationship that they're trying to write about. The final sequence in the film is a bow that ties it all together, where we see in the future that Isaac is still living with Laura, and he calls her mom. But this doesn't hit like it should because the last time that we saw them being kind to one another, or even seem like they care that the other one exists, was like 40 minutes before this. And while I really do like a lot of what is going on here, for me it was unfocused to a sometimes painful degree. Now, in this vein, I'm actually somewhat torn on the film's title itself, as it was captivating enough to make me click on it and watch it in the first place. But I also feel as if the title itself stands in the way of possibly understanding the monster. The original title of the script was Daddy's Home, but was changed in the making of the film because they were concerned about the Will Ferrell movie of the same name competing with them algorithmically in the search engines. But calling the film Daddy's Head made me focus too much on the literal head of the creature, because the film's marketing also leans into the imagery of the head heavily, and in the house they have a head statue on display, even though it is not actually all that important to what is going on here. There were details that I missed initially because I was too laser focused on moments involving head imagery itself, because I thought that was going to end up being more important than it actually is. And as a result, I missed out on other things like how the fire may have been connected to the creature, because my mind was directed elsewhere. And I think a more distanced, looser title would have possibly aided in giving a more objective experience for the audience, rather than having their attention misplaced in direction from the beginning. But also, that might just 100% be a me problem that affected me on a singular level in my viewing of it. I do, however, really like our ending here, where, as I said, Isaac Groen is still living with Laura, and returns to the home for the first time since that horrible night, where she came head-to-head with the beast in an all-out brawl. And he returns to the home that his father built for him out in the woods that is now crumbling and fading from this world. Still existing, but in a less concrete way, just like the literal memories of his father and the pain that he experienced after his death. It'll never be gone. Even after the shack has fully rotted away, the pattern will be left in the dirt. The grass will grow in a funny way around where it used to be. It will fade and fade, but still, a distant memory of it will be left of what an intense monstrosity this once was. Isaac dares to venture into the structure for the first time, and inside of the bones of this house that once in its glory resembled bones itself, he finds the skeleton of the thing. Whatever it was. It doesn't really matter. All that really does was that he overcame it. He didn't let it stop him.